I'm not proud of this, but I'll tell you anyway. It was a Wednesday afternoon. My desk was clean, my coffee was fresh, and I had exactly one thing I needed to do. Finish a project proposal that had been sitting in my drafts folder since Monday. My manager needed it by end of week. It wasn't complicated. I knew exactly what to write. And yet, I checked my email. Responded to a Slack message that wasn't urgent. Reorganized my desktop folders for no real reason. Got up to refill my water bottle even though it was still half full. Sat back down, opened a new tab. Closed it, opened it again. 2 hours passed. The proposal was still blank. I remember sitting there feeling genuinely confused about myself. I wasn't tired. I wasn't stuck. I knew what I needed to do. So why couldn't I just do it? For a long time, I thought the answer was willpower. I told myself I just needed to be stronger, more disciplined, more motivated. I looked up productivity hacks, downloaded focus apps, set timers, made elaborate to-do lists with color codes and priority levels. Some of it helped, for a day, maybe 2. Then I'd slide right back into the same patterns. What nobody told me, and what changed everything when I finally understood it, is that this isn't a willpower problem. It's a training problem. Your brain is not lazy, it's not weak. It is, in fact, doing exactly what it was designed to do, conserving energy, avoiding discomfort, and steering you toward whatever feels easier in the moment. That's not a character flaw. That's biology. The real question isn't why your brain avoids hard things. The real question is, has anyone ever taught you how to train it to do them anyway? Because here's what I've learned. The people who consistently do hard things, who finish what they start, who show up even when they don't feel like it, who don't spend 2 hours avoiding a blank page, they're not running on more willpower than you. They've just trained their brains differently. And training is something anyone can do. That's what this is about. Not a motivational speech, not a list of tips to try for a week and forget. This is about understanding how your brain actually works, and then using that understanding to build something real. Something that holds up on a Tuesday when you're tired, on a Friday when you'd rather do anything else, on the days when motivation shows up and the days when it doesn't. We're going to go through 8 ideas, each one practical, each one grounded in how the brain actually functions. And by the time we're done, you'll have a clearer picture of why hard things feel hard, and exactly what to do about it. Let's start at the beginning. Chapter 1. Understand why your brain avoids hard things. Here's something that might change the way you see yourself. Your brain uses roughly 20% of your body's total energy, despite being only about 2% of your body weight. It is, pound for pound, the most expensive organ you have. And because of that, it has one deeply ingrained priority that overrides almost everything else. Conserve energy whenever possible. This isn't a flaw. For most of human history, this was survival. When you didn't know where your next meal was coming from, burning unnecessary mental energy was genuinely dangerous. The brain learned to take shortcuts, avoid effort, and default to whatever was familiar and safe. That wiring kept our ancestors alive. The problem is that same wiring is still running in the background today. While you're sitting at your desk, staring at a task you know you need to do, feeling an almost physical pull towards something easier. That pull has a name. Neuroscientists call it the path of least resistance. Your brain, given a choice between a cognitively demanding task and a low-effort one, will almost always push you toward the easier option. Not because you're weak, not because you don't care, but because that's what brains do. That's what your brain has been doing since the day you were born. And here's the part that most people miss. Your brain doesn't distinguish between this is hard because it's valuable and this is hard because it's dangerous. It just registers difficulty, and difficulty triggers avoidance. The same mechanism that would have stopped your ancestor from wandering into unknown territory is the same mechanism that stops you from opening that document, making that call, or starting that project you've been putting off for weeks. It's not personal. It's not a reflection of your intelligence or your character or your potential. It's just an outdated program running on modern hardware. So what does avoidance actually look like in real life? It looks like suddenly needing to clean your desk before you can start working. It looks like checking your phone one more time before you begin. It looks like deciding you need to do more research before you're ready to write. It looks like feeling genuinely, inexplicably exhausted the moment you sit down to do something that matters. And perfectly fine 5 minutes later when you switch to something easy. Sound familiar? That sensation, that resistance, is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It's a sign that your brain is working exactly as designed. The issue isn't the resistance itself. The issue is that nobody ever taught you how to work with it. Here's a small but powerful shift that helps. Instead of interpreting resistance as a signal to stop, start treating it as information. When you feel that familiar pull away from something hard, don't judge it, don't fight it, just notice it. Say to yourself, out loud if you have to, my brain is avoiding. That's what's happening right now. That simple act of naming it does something important. It creates a tiny bit of distance between you and the automatic response. Instead of being inside the avoidance, you're watching it. And the moment you can watch it, you have a choice, which is something you didn't have before. This isn't about forcing yourself through resistance with gritted teeth. That approach burns out fast. This is about understanding the mechanism well enough to stop taking it personally and start working around it. Because here's the truth. The people who consistently do hard things aren't people who feel no resistance. They feel it too, every single time. The difference is they've learned to recognize it for what it is, just a brain doing its job, and they've trained themselves to move anyway. That training starts with awareness, and awareness starts right here. Your brain isn't broken. It isn't working against you. It's running an old program in a new world. And old programs with enough patience and the right approach can be rewritten. Your brain isn't broken. It's just untrained. Chapter 2. Train your brain to start before you feel ready. How many times have you waited to feel ready and it never came? You've been there. The task is sitting right in front of you. You know what needs to be done. But something holds you back. You tell yourself you'll start when you're in the right headspace, when you've had enough sleep, when things calm down a little, when inspiration hits, and somehow none of those conditions ever quite arrive. Here's what's actually happening. Readiness is not a prerequisite for action. It's a result of it. Your brain has sold you a story that you need to feel a certain way before you begin. But that story is backwards. The feeling of being ready, of being in flow, of things clicking into place, that almost never comes before you start. It comes after, sometimes 5 minutes after, sometimes 10, but it comes after, not before. Think about the last time you dreaded starting something. A difficult email, a hard conversation, a project you'd been avoiding. And then once you actually began, it wasn't nearly as bad as you'd built it up to be. That's not a coincidence. That's your brain updating its threat assessment in real time. Before you started, it was predicting discomfort. Once you started, it got actual data. And the actual data was almost always less frightening than the prediction. The problem is, most people never get to that point. They stay in the prediction phase. They live inside the anticipation of difficulty rather than the reality of it. And the anticipation, left unchecked, grows. The longer you wait, the bigger the task becomes in your mind. The bigger it becomes, the harder it is to start. It's a loop, and the only way to break it is to move before you feel ready. There's a simple technique for this. It's called the one ugly sentence rule. When you're facing something hard and you feel that familiar resistance, don't try to do it well. Don't aim for quality. Don't wait for the right words or the right idea or the right moment. Just produce the ugliest, most imperfect version of the first step you can manage. Write one bad sentence. Send one rough draft. Make one awkward phone call. Do 5 minutes of the thing you've been avoiding. Badly, messily, without any pressure to get it right. What happens next is almost mechanical. Your brain, once engaged with a task, has a natural pull toward completion. Psychologists call this the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency of the mind to fixate on unfinished things. Once you've started, even poorly, your brain wants to finish. The resistance that felt so solid before you began starts to dissolve almost immediately. This isn't about tricking yourself. It's about understanding that the hardest part of any difficult task is almost always the first 30 seconds. Not the middle, not the end, the beginning. Get past that, even badly, and everything changes. One more thing worth saying here. A lot of people avoid starting because they're afraid of doing it wrong. They'd rather not begin than begin imperfectly. And underneath that, often is a belief that their work is a reflection of their worth. That a bad first draft means something about who they are. It doesn't. A bad first draft means you started. And starting, messy, imperfect, uncertain starting, is the only thing that ever leads anywhere. The people who consistently produce good work aren't the people who wait until they're sure it'll be good. They're the people who've made peace with the ugly beginning. They've learned that quality is downstream of action, not upstream of it. So the next time you feel yourself waiting for the right moment, recognize it for what it is. Your brain doing its job, and then do yours. Readiness is a lie your brain tells you to stay comfortable. Chapter 3. Build discomfort tolerance. One hard rep at a time. There's a reason the gym exists. Not just for physical fitness, but as proof of a principle most people understand in theory and ignore in practice. You don't get stronger by staying comfortable. You get stronger by doing the thing that's hard, repeatedly, until it isn't hard anymore. Your muscles don't grow during the workout. They grow during the recovery. After the stress, after the strain, after you've pushed past the point where your body wanted to quit. The discomfort isn't a side effect of the process. It is the process. Your brain works the same way. Every time you push through something uncomfortable, a difficult conversation, a task you'd rather avoid, a decision you've been putting off, your brain is adapting. It's recalibrating what counts as hard. It's building what psychologists call distress tolerance, the capacity to sit with discomfort without immediately running from it. And just like muscle, that capacity grows with use. The problem is most people treat mental discomfort as a stop sign. The moment something feels hard or uncertain or unpleasant, they interpret that feeling as a signal to back off, to wait, to find something easier. And every time they do that, they're training their brain just in the wrong direction. Every time you avoid discomfort, you're teaching your brain that discomfort is something to be escaped. And your brain is a fast learner. So how do you reverse that? One rep at a time. This doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't need to sign up for a marathon or take cold showers at 5 a.m. or do anything that looks impressive from the outside. The rep can be small. In fact, it should be small, especially at first. It can look like this. You have a task on your list that you've been avoiding for 3 days. Instead of starting with the easiest thing on the list, which is what your brain wants, you open that task first. You don't have to finish it. You just have to start it. You sit with the discomfort of not knowing exactly how it'll go. You stay in the room with the hard thing instead of leaving. That's a rep. Do that enough times, and something shifts. The tasks that used to feel heavy start to feel manageable. Not because they've changed, but because you have. Your threshold for what counts as uncomfortable has moved. Things that would have stopped you cold 6 months ago barely register now. There's a concept worth understanding here called systematic desensitization, originally developed in psychology to help people overcome phobias. The idea is simple. Repeated, gradual exposure to something that causes anxiety reduces the anxiety response over time. The brain stops firing alarm signals for things it has learned are not actually threatening. You can use this deliberately. Every hard thing you do on purpose is a controlled exposure. You're showing your brain, through direct experience, that difficulty is survivable. That discomfort doesn't mean danger, that you can feel resistance and move anyway. And here's the part that surprises most people. The benefits don't stay contained to the area where you practiced. Build discomfort tolerance in one area of your life, and it starts showing up everywhere else. The person who learns to sit with the discomfort of a hard workout often finds it easier to sit with the discomfort of a hard conversation. The person who trains themselves to start difficult tasks at work often finds it easier to make difficult decisions at home. The skill transfers. Because it was never really about the specific task, it was about the relationship between you and discomfort itself. That relationship can be changed. It just takes reps. Start with one today. Not the biggest, hardest thing on your list. Just one thing you've been avoiding. Open it. Sit with it. Stay in the room. Every hard thing you do is a rep. Reps build strength. Chapter 4. Use the power of identity to override resistance. At some point, you've probably said something like this out loud. I'm just not a morning person. Or, I've never been good with deadlines. Or, I'm the kind of person who always starts things and never finishes them. It comes out casually, almost like a joke. And the people around you laugh or nod because they have their own versions of the same sentence. It feels harmless, just a little self-aware humor about your quirks and limitations. But here's what's actually happening when you say those things. You're not describing yourself, you're deciding yourself. Every time you attach a label to who you are, your brain files it away as a fact about you, and then works quietly in the background to make sure your behavior stays consistent with that fact. Not because your brain is cruel, because consistency is how it keeps the world predictable. And predictable feels safe. This is what psychologists call identity-based behavior. The actions you take on a daily basis are not primarily driven by goals or plans or motivation levels. They're driven by your answer to one quiet, mostly unconscious question. What would someone like me do right now? If your answer is, someone like me avoids hard things, you will avoid hard things. Not because you decided to, but because it feels like the natural thing to do. It feels like you. And this works in the other direction too. When your identity shifts, your behavior shifts with it, often without you having to force anything. A person who genuinely sees themselves as someone who follows through doesn't need to motivate themselves to finish what they start. They just do it. Because not doing it would feel like a contradiction. It would feel like being someone they're not. This isn't abstract philosophy, it's practical. Think about the difference between someone who says, I'm trying to quit smoking, and someone who says, I'm not a smoker. Same external behavior, not smoking, completely different internal experience. The first person is fighting a craving. The second person is just being who they are. The identity does the heavy lifting that willpower can't sustain. So how do you actually change an identity that's been running on autopilot for years? You don't do it by thinking differently. You do it by acting differently, and then letting the evidence accumulate. Every action you take is a vote for the kind of person you believe yourself to be. When you sit down and do the hard thing, even once, even imperfectly, you cast a vote. You're saying with your behavior, this is the kind of person I am. One vote doesn't win an election, but votes add up. And after enough of them, the story you tell about yourself starts to change. Not because you decided to change it, but because the evidence demanded it. This is why small actions matter more than most people think. It's not about the output of any single task. It's about what doing that task says about who you are. The person who sits down and writes one paragraph when they didn't feel like writing is not just one paragraph closer to finishing. They're one vote closer to being someone who writes. And that identity, once it takes hold, is far more powerful than any productivity system you could put in place. There's also a harder truth here worth sitting with. Some of the identity labels you're carrying right now weren't chosen by you. They were handed to you by a teacher who said you weren't focused enough, a parent who called you lazy, a boss who implied you couldn't handle pressure. You absorbed those labels at some point, filed them under facts about me, and have been living inside them ever since. They were never facts. They were opinions, and opinions can be replaced. Not overnight, not by simply deciding to feel differently, but gradually, through action, through showing up when it's hard, through casting enough votes, one at a time, that the old story loses its grip and a new one takes its place. Start small. The next time you face something difficult, ask yourself one question before you decide what to do. Not, do I feel like doing this? Because that answer will almost always be no. Ask instead, what would someone who does hard things do right now? And then do that. Stop asking what you should do. Ask who you're becoming. Chapter 5. Rewire your reward system to crave progress. Here's a pattern worth looking at, honestly. You sit down to do something hard. Before you begin, you check your phone. Just quickly. Then you get up to make coffee, even though you already have some. You scroll through your inbox, not looking for anything specific. Maybe you watch one short video, just to ease into things. 20 minutes pass, you finally open the task. But something feels off. Your focus is scattered, your energy is lower than it was when you sat down. And you can't quite figure out why. Here's why. You already spent your dopamine. Dopamine is the neurotransmitter most people associate with pleasure, but that's not quite accurate. Dopamine isn't really about pleasure, it's about anticipation. It's the chemical your brain releases when it expects a reward. And your brain releases it for scrolling, for checking notifications, for anything that delivers a quick, unpredictable hit of novelty or stimulation. The problem isn't that these things feel good. The problem is that your brain doesn't distinguish between earned reward and unearned reward. It just registers the chemical hit and files that behavior away as something worth repeating. Do this enough times, and you've trained your brain to expect stimulation before effort, to need the reward before the work. And a brain that expects reward before effort will resist effort every single time. This is not a willpower problem. This is a sequencing problem. Think about how a vending machine works. You put money in first, then you get the snack. That's the sequence your brain needs to learn for hard things. Effort first, reward after. Not reward first, effort whenever you get around to it. The good news is this system is not fixed. Your reward circuitry is plastic. It can be reshaped by deliberate practice. The brain learns to crave whatever it has been consistently rewarded for doing. Train it to associate reward with completion, and over time it will start to pull you toward completion rather than away from it. Here's how to start doing that practically. The first step is to audit your pre-work routine. Be honest about what you do in the 20 minutes before you start a hard task. If that time is filled with low-effort stimulation, phone, social media, casual browsing, you are systematically undermining your own focus before you even begin. That pre-work window is not downtime, it's priming. And right now it might be priming you for distraction instead of depth. The second step is to flip the sequence deliberately. Before you start a hard task, do nothing stimulating. Sit quietly for 2 minutes if you have to. Let your brain get a little bored. Boredom, it turns out, is not the enemy of focus. Boredom is the on-ramp to focus. A brain that isn't chasing stimulation is a brain that's ready to go deep. The third step is to make your rewards real and specific, not vague future outcomes, not "I'll feel better about myself eventually," but concrete, immediate, and proportional. Finish a hard block of work, then give yourself something you actually enjoy. A good cup of coffee, a walk outside, 15 minutes of something you genuinely like. The specificity matters. The immediacy matters. Your brain needs to feel the connection between the effort and the reward, while the memory of the effort is still fresh. Over time, and this is the part that changes everything, you stop needing the external reward as much, because the brain starts to associate the work itself with the feeling of reward, the sense of completion, of forward movement, of doing something hard and finishing it. That becomes its own dopamine hit. Not as loud as a phone notification, but steadier, deeper, and far more sustainable. There's one more thing worth naming here. A lot of people feel guilty about needing rewards at all, like they should be able to do hard things purely out of discipline or duty, without any incentive beyond the task itself. But that's not how human brains work. And expecting yourself to operate that way is setting yourself up to fail. Needing a reward system isn't weakness, it's biology. The question isn't whether to use your reward system, it's whether you're using it deliberately or letting it use you. Right now, for most people, it's the latter. You can change that. One sequence at a time. Effort first, reward after. Repeat until the brain learns. What you reward, you repeat. Choose wisely. Chapter 6. Protect your focus like your future depends on it. Consider this for a moment. The average office worker is interrupted or switches tasks every 3 minutes and 5 seconds. And after each interruption, it takes an average of 23 minutes to fully return to the original task. Do the math on that and something uncomfortable becomes clear. On a typical workday, you may never reach deep focus at all. Not because you're not trying, but because the environment you're working in was never designed to support it. This is not a personal failing, but it is a personal problem, because nobody is going to fix it for you. Focus has become one of the most valuable and most scarce cognitive resources in modern life. Not intelligence, not talent, not even discipline. The ability to direct your full attention at one hard thing without interruption for an extended period of time. That is the skill that separates people who make real progress from people who stay perpetually busy without moving forward. And it is a skill, not a personality trait, not something you either have or don't. A skill, which means it can be built, protected, and strengthened deliberately. But first, you have to understand what's actually destroying it. The obvious culprit is your phone. Notifications, messages, the reflexive urge to check something every few minutes. But the phone is just the most visible symptom of a deeper pattern. The real problem is that most people have trained themselves over years to be uncomfortable with sustained attention. Every time you've reached for your phone when a task got difficult, every time you've opened a new tab instead of sitting with a hard problem, every time you've interrupted yourself before the interruption came from outside, you've been teaching your brain that deep focus is something to escape from, not something to settle into. And now that training has calcified into habit. So what does it actually look like to rebuild it? It starts with something simple but non-negotiable. You have to create conditions where deep focus is possible before you can practice deep focus. This means phone on silent, face down, or in another room entirely. It means closing tabs that aren't relevant to what you're doing. It means telling the people around you, clearly, without apology, that you're unavailable for a set period of time. This isn't rudeness. This is respecting your own work enough to protect the conditions it needs to exist. Then comes the practice itself. Start with what researchers call a focus block, a period of uninterrupted single-task work. The length matters less than the quality. 45 minutes of genuine, undivided attention is worth more than 3 hours of fragmented, distracted effort. If 45 minutes feels like too much right now, start with 20. The goal isn't duration. The goal is depth. During that block, one task, not two. Not a task with a side of email monitoring. One thing, pursued without switching, until the block ends. What you'll notice, especially at first, is that your brain will resist this. It will generate reasons to check something, look something up, do something else. That restlessness isn't boredom. It's withdrawal. Your brain has been conditioned to expect constant stimulation, and single tasking feels strange and uncomfortable by comparison. That feeling will pass, but only if you don't give in to it. Here's the deeper truth about focus that most productivity advice misses. What you consistently pay attention to is, in a very real sense, what your life becomes. Not in a mystical way, in a practical one. The things you focus on are the things that get built. The projects, the relationships, the skills, the understanding. Everything that matters in your life grew from sustained attention. And everything that hasn't grown, the things you've wanted to do, the person you've wanted to become, has stayed small precisely because your attention kept getting pulled somewhere else. Protecting your focus isn't a productivity tactic. It's an act of self-respect. It's saying that the things you care about deserve your full presence. not whatever's left over after the notifications and the interruptions and the endless low-grade distraction have taken their share. You don't get that time back. The hour you spent half-focused is gone, but the next hour doesn't have to go the same way. Distraction isn't just a bad habit. It's a theft of your potential. And yet, even when people understand all of this intellectually, there's still a gap between knowing and doing. Between understanding that focus matters and actually protecting it in the middle of a real workday, with its meetings and messages and the 1,000 small demands that feel urgent even when they aren't. So let's talk about what protecting focus actually looks like in practice. Not in theory, not in ideal conditions. In the real, messy, interruption-filled environment most of us actually work in. The first thing to accept is that you cannot protect your focus after the distraction has already arrived. By the time the notification has pinged, the colleague has stopped by your desk, or the anxiety about an unread email has crept into your thoughts, you've already lost the thread. Protection has to happen before the distraction, not in response to it. This means setting up your environment deliberately. Every single time you sit down to do deep work, as if focus was something fragile that needs specific conditions to survive. Because it is, and it does. Think of your focus block as a surgery. Surgeons don't take calls mid-operation. They don't pause to check their messages. They don't multitask, not because they're rude, but because the thing they're doing requires complete presence, and anything less puts the outcome at risk. Your deep work deserves the same respect. The emails will wait. The messages will wait. Very few things that feel urgent actually are. The second practical element is learning to work with your brain's natural energy cycles rather than against them. Your brain doesn't sustain peak cognitive performance evenly across the day. Most people have a window, usually in the morning, sometimes in the late afternoon, where their prefrontal cortex is at its sharpest, their resistance is lowest, and their capacity for deep work is highest. That window is not unlimited. It's roughly 90 minutes to 2 hours before cognitive fatigue starts to set in. That window is your most valuable professional asset. Treat it accordingly. Don't spend it on email. Don't spend it in meetings that could have been an email. Don't spend it on administrative tasks that require presence but not real thinking. Spend it on the hardest, most important thing you have to do, the thing that actually moves the needle. Everything else can happen in the lower energy hours that follow. The third element is recovery. Focus is not just about the periods of concentration, it's about what you do between them. A genuine break, stepping outside, moving your body, letting your mind wander without a screen, restores cognitive resources in a way that passive scrolling never does. In fact, reaching for your phone during a break actively prevents the restoration your brain needs, because it keeps the attentional system engaged when what it needs is to rest. Rest is not wasted time. Rest is what makes the next focus block possible. Chapter 7. Train consistency, not motivation. Motivation is seductive because it feels like the answer. When you have it, everything seems possible. You wake up early without an alarm. You sit down to work without negotiating with yourself. You push through hard things without much resistance because the energy is just there, carrying you forward. It feels like this, finally, is what it's supposed to feel like. And then it leaves. Without warning, without explanation, you wake up one morning and it's just gone. The same task that felt exciting last week now feels heavy and pointless. The same goal that lit you up a month ago now feels distant and unclear. And you sit there wondering what happened, and more importantly, how to get it back. Here's the uncomfortable truth about motivation that nobody wants to hear. Motivation is a feeling, and feelings are not reliable infrastructure. You would never build a house on a foundation that appears randomly and disappears without notice. You would never run a business on a resource that shows up when it feels like it and vanishes when you need it most. And yet that's exactly what most people are doing when they make motivation the engine of their progress. They're building on sand, and they're confused when things keep sinking. Consistency is different. Consistency is a decision, and decisions don't depend on how you feel. Think about the things in your life that happen regardless of your emotional state. You go to work on days you don't feel like going. You pay your bills even when money feels tight. You show up to things that matter. Not because you're always energized and inspired, but because you've decided they're non-negotiable. Consistency works the same way. It's not about feeling ready or motivated or in the zone. It's about deciding that the thing gets done, and then doing it. This shift sounds simple. It is not easy. Because motivation, even when it's unreliable, feels good. It makes hard work feel effortless. Consistency, by contrast, often feels like grinding, like doing the thing when every part of you would rather not. Like showing up to a workout when you're tired, opening a document when you have nothing to say, making the call when you'd rather send an email. But here's what happens when you do it anyway. Every time you show up without motivation, you are training something more valuable than productivity. You are training trust. Trust in yourself. The quiet, accumulating knowledge that you are someone who follows through. Not just when it's easy, not just when you feel inspired, but when it's hard and inconvenient and the last thing you want to do. That kind of self-trust is rare, and it changes everything. Not just how much you get done, but how you feel about yourself. The anxiety that comes from chronic inconsistency, from constantly falling short of what you said you'd do, from knowing deep down that you can't quite rely on yourself, that starts to dissolve. Slowly, then all at once. There's a practical concept worth introducing here called minimum viable effort. On the days when motivation is nowhere to be found, and those days will come regularly for the rest of your life, the answer is not to push harder. The answer is not to manufacture enthusiasm you don't have. The answer is to shrink the requirement down to its smallest possible form and do that. You plan to write for an hour. You have no energy. Write for 15 minutes. You planned a full workout. Your body feels like concrete. Do 10 minutes. You plan to tackle a complex project. Your brain is foggy. Open the file and read what you wrote last time. Don't cancel. Don't reschedule. Don't negotiate your way out of it entirely. Just do less, but do something. This matters for two reasons. First, the practical one. Something is almost always better than nothing. 15 minutes of real work compounds over time in ways that 0 minutes never will. But the second reason is more important. Every time you show up, even in a diminished capacity, you are casting a vote for the identity of someone who shows up. And that vote counts. That vote is building something. The days you feel like it, those are easy. Your character isn't being built on those days. Show up on the hard days. That's where character is built. And there's one more dimension of consistency that rarely gets talked about, the emotional one. Most conversations about consistency focus on output. Did you do the thing? How many days in a row? What's your streak? And while those metrics have their place, they miss something important. Consistency isn't just about what you produce, it's about how you relate to yourself over time. Think about what chronic inconsistency actually feels like from the inside. You set an intention to write, to exercise, to work on the thing that matters, and then you don't follow through. Once, then again after that. And each time there's a small but real erosion, not just of progress, but of trust. Every time you break a promise to yourself, your brain quietly updates its model of who you are. Not dramatically, not consciously, but the update happens. And over time, those updates accumulate into a belief, often unspoken, often unexamined, that you are someone who doesn't follow through. Someone who means well but can't quite be relied upon, even by yourself. That belief is corrosive. It makes starting harder, because part of you already expects to quit. It makes the middle harder, because the doubt is always there, whispering that this time will be no different. And it makes the hard days, the days when consistency matters most, nearly impossible, because you've stopped trusting that you'll show up. This is why the minimum viable effort concept is not just a productivity tool, it's a trust repair mechanism. Every time you show up, even for 15 minutes, even in a diminished, imperfect, barely there way, you are making a deposit into an account that has probably been overdrawn for a while. You are giving yourself evidence, one small piece at a time, that you are someone who can be counted on. Not someone who performs perfectly, not someone who never struggles, but someone who shows up. Someone who doesn't quit just because the conditions aren't ideal. That evidence compounds. Slowly at first, then faster. And at some point, you won't be able to pinpoint exactly when, the internal story starts to shift. The doubt gets quieter. The starting gets easier. Not because the work has gotten easier, but because you've rebuilt enough trust in yourself that the fear of quitting has lost most of its power over you. There's also something worth saying about the days when you genuinely cannot show up. When life intervenes, illness, crisis, the kind of circumstances that make your usual routine genuinely impossible. Missing one day is not the problem. The problem is the story you tell yourself about missing one day. If that story is, "I've broken the streak, so it's over, so I might as well stop," that story will cost you far more than the missed a day ever would have. The people who sustain consistency over the long term are not the people who never miss a day. They're the people who miss a day and come back the next day anyway. Without drama, without a long recommitment ritual, without waiting until Monday or the first of the month or some other arbitrary fresh start. They just come back, because that's what they do. That's the whole skill, really. Not perfection, not an unbroken streak, just the quiet, unglamorous ability to return again and again to the thing that matters. Show up on the hard days. That's where character is built. Chapter 8. Make hard things your new normal. There's a moment that happens quietly, without fanfare, that you might have already experienced in some small area of your life. You're doing something that used to feel hard, something that used to require negotiation, preparation, a certain amount of internal convincing before you could begin. And you realize mid-task that you're just doing it. No resistance, no dread, no internal debate. It's just a thing you do now, like brushing your teeth or making your morning coffee. It became normal without you noticing exactly when. That moment is not an accident. That moment is the result of training. And it is available to you, not just in the small areas where you've already experienced it, but in the areas that feel most out of reach right now. The hard conversations you keep avoiding, the disciplined habits you keep starting and stopping, the ambitious work you keep circling but never quite committing to. All of it can become normal. Not easy necessarily, but normal. And normal is something your brain can sustain indefinitely. Here's the neuroscience behind what's actually happening when something shifts from hard to normal. Every time you perform an action, your brain strengthens the neural pathway associated with that action. Neuroscientists describe this with a phrase worth remembering. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The more often a particular sequence of thought and behavior occurs, the more efficient and automatic that sequence becomes. This is how habits form. Not through willpower or motivation, but through repetition that gradually converts conscious effort into automatic response. In the beginning, doing a hard thing requires significant cognitive resources. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and self-control, has to work hard to override the default pull toward comfort. It's effortful. It's draining. It's why hard things feel hard. But with repetition, something changes. The behavior starts to migrate from the prefrontal cortex, the effortful, deliberate part of your brain, toward the basal ganglia, which handles automatic, habitual behavior. The brain, in its endless drive toward efficiency, begins to automate what was once a struggle. It stops treating the behavior as a decision that needs to be made and starts treating it as just something that happens. This is what people mean when they talk about discipline becoming a lifestyle rather than a constant battle. It's not that disciplined people have more willpower. It's that they've repeated certain behaviors long enough that those behaviors no longer require much willpower at all. The decision has already been made. It was made weeks or months ago, through repetition, and now the brain just executes. So how do you get there deliberately? The first thing to understand is that the transition from hard to normal is not linear. It doesn't feel like gradual, steady improvement. It feels like nothing is changing for a long time. And then something quietly shifts. Most people quit during the long middle stretch, when the behavior still feels effortful and the automaticity hasn't arrived yet. They interpret the continued difficulty as evidence that it's not working. But continued difficulty in the middle of a training process is not evidence of failure. It's evidence that you're in the middle of a training process. Stay in it. The second thing is to stop waiting for hard things to stop feeling hard before you treat them as normal. Normal isn't a feeling. It's a decision about how you relate to something. You decide to treat the hard thing as just part of what you do. You stop giving it special status as something daunting or exceptional. You stop making a big deal out of it internally. You just do it the way you do other unremarkable things, and you move on with your day. This sounds almost too simple, but the way you frame things internally has a measurable effect on how your brain processes them. When you treat something as a massive obstacle that requires enormous effort, your brain responds accordingly. It marshals resistance, generates anxiety, makes the thing feel heavier than it needs to be. When you treat something as just a thing you do, your brain follows that lead too. Not immediately, not perfectly. But over time, the framing shapes the experience. The third thing, and this is perhaps the most important, is to raise your floor rather than your ceiling. Most people focus on their best days. They set targets based on peak performance and measure themselves against those targets even on their worst days. And when they inevitably fall short, they feel like they're failing, when really they're just having a normal human day. Raising your floor means deciding what the minimum acceptable version of your effort looks like, and then holding that minimum with more consistency than you hold your maximum. Your ceiling can fluctuate. Some days you'll exceed your own expectations. Some days you won't. But your floor, the baseline below which you simply don't go, that stays fixed. Over time, as the floor holds and the repetitions accumulate, something remarkable happens. The floor you set today becomes the ceiling you exceeded last year. What felt like a stretch becomes the baseline. What felt hard becomes normal. And then you raise the floor again, not dramatically, not all at once, but incrementally, in pace with the brain's ability to adapt. This is how transformation actually works. Not through sudden leaps or breakthrough moments, through the slow, unglamorous, deeply reliable process of showing up, repeating, and letting your brain catch up to the person you're deciding to become. There's no shortcut to this, no hack, no optimized system that gets you there faster without the reps. The reps are the point. The reps are what changes you. And here's what's worth holding on to when the process feels slow or invisible or pointless. Every hard thing you do today is quietly renegotiating what your brain considers normal. Every time you sit down to do the thing you'd rather avoid, you are moving an invisible dial, imperceptibly but permanently, in the direction of a version of yourself for whom that thing is just what you do. You won't feel it happening. You'll feel the resistance, the effort, the friction of something that hasn't become automatic yet. But underneath all of that, the wiring is changing. The pathways are strengthening. The new normal is being built, one rep at a time, one day at a time, whether you can see it or not. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your training. And there's something else worth understanding about this process that most people never stop to consider. The version of you that finds hard things normal is not a different person. It's the same person, with different wiring. And that distinction matters, because it means you don't have to wait to become someone else before you can start living differently. You don't have to wait until you feel more disciplined, more motivated, more put together. You can start with exactly who you are right now, resistant, uncertain, imperfect, and let the repetition do its work from there. This is important because one of the most common ways people stall is by treating their current self as an obstacle to overcome before the real work can begin. They tell themselves they'll start being consistent once they've dealt with their procrastination problem. They'll commit to hard things once they've figured out why they avoid them. They'll build the new normal once they've become the kind of person who can sustain it. But you don't fix the procrastination and then start. You start, and the starting is what fixes the procrastination. The new normal isn't a destination you arrive at before you begin living differently. It's what emerges from living differently, accumulated over time, one repetition at a time. There's a metaphor that captures this well. When a plane takes off, it uses the vast majority of its fuel during the first few minutes of flight, fighting gravity, pushing through resistance, climbing to altitude. Once it reaches cruising altitude, everything changes. The engines don't have to work nearly as hard. The resistance drops. The journey becomes sustainable in a way that the takeoff never was. Hard things work the same way. The beginning, the early repetitions, the days before automaticity sets in, the stretch when everything still feels effortful. That's the takeoff. It's expensive. It's uncomfortable. It feels like it shouldn't be this hard. But it's not going to feel like this forever. There is a cruising altitude. There is a point where the behavior requires less fuel, generates less resistance, and becomes something you simply do rather than something you have to fight to do. Most people never get there because they quit during the takeoff. Don't quit during the takeoff. The reps you put in during the hardest stretch, when nothing feels automatic yet, when the results aren't visible yet, when you're running on decision rather than momentum, those are the most valuable reps of all. Because those are the reps that build the foundation. Everything else rests on. Every hard thing starts as a choice. With enough repetition, it becomes a habit. With enough habit, it becomes identity. And with enough identity, it becomes normal. That's the whole process, and it's available to you, starting right now with whatever hard thing is sitting in front of you today. I want to come back to that Wednesday afternoon I told you about at the beginning. The blank proposal, the refilled water bottle, the 2 hours that disappeared into nothing while the work sat untouched on my screen. I told you I was confused about myself that day. And I was. But looking back, what I was really confused about wasn't my behavior. It was the story I had about my behavior. I thought the problem was me, my lack of discipline, my weak willpower, my inability to just sit down and do what needed to be done like a normal, functioning adult. I had been telling myself that story for years, in different forms, about different tasks, in different jobs. And I had never once stopped to question whether the story was actually true. It wasn't. The problem was never me. The problem was that nobody had ever taught me how my brain actually works. And without that understanding, I was fighting a battle I didn't know how to fight. I was trying to override a biological system with sheer force of will, wondering why it kept failing, and concluding that the failure said something fundamental about who I was. It didn't. And if you've recognized yourself anywhere in what we've covered today, in the avoidance, the waiting, the inconsistency, the gap between who you want to be and what you actually do, I want to be clear about something. That gap is not evidence of a character flaw. It's evidence of an untrained brain. And untrained things can be trained. That's the whole point. What we've covered in these 8 chapters is not a collection of motivational ideas. It's a map of how the brain resists hard things and how to work with that resistance rather than against it. Understanding why avoidance happens. Learning to start before you feel ready. Building discomfort. Tolerance 1 rep at a time. Using identity to drive behavior instead of waiting for motivation to show up. Rewiring your reward system so it pulls you toward progress instead of away from it. Protecting the focused attention that everything meaningful depends on. Choosing consistency over the unreliable energy of motivation. And slowly, through repetition, making hard things your new normal. None of this is quick. None of this is a hack. There is no version of this process that bypasses the work. But the work is also not as mysterious or as impossible as it can feel from the outside. It's just repetition. It's just showing up. It's just doing the hard thing 1 more time than you did yesterday. And trusting that the accumulation of those moments is building something real, even when you can't see it yet. And here's the last thing I'll leave you with. The version of you that does hard things consistently. That sits down without negotiating, that follows through without needing to feel inspired, that has made peace with discomfort and built a life that reflects what you actually value. That version of you is not waiting to be discovered. It's waiting to be built, rep by rep, day by day, 1 hard thing at a time. You already have everything you need to start. Your brain isn't broken. It's just untrained. And now, you know what to do.